Good morning, everybody. Come on, we're Earpers, we can do better than that. Good morning, everybody. There we go, all right. Getting some feedback, move this away, there we go. A couple of quick notes before we get started this morning. A reminder, in case anyone didn't hear yesterday, if you'd like to come to our live podcast, Bonnie and I will be recording at 3 p.m. this afternoon in the Orville room, which is the far corner over there. It's a small room, so there won't be a ton of room to get folks in, but if it doesn't conflict with anything else you got going, feel free to stop by. We'll have some fun, as we always do, recording. Also at 12:15 today, a reminder that we have the Fandom and Belonging panel. Obviously, everybody's invited if you want to come by on that one, too. Should be some great stuff coming up there. So be sure to have a great time. As I often say at these panels and at these events, if you've heard any of the recordings, these EarperCons are very special. So, you know, at some point in the craziness of the busy day today, try to find yourself, step aside, maybe close your eyes or whatever, and just take a moment to realize just how special this energy is and this group is. This is the kind of stuff you want to have in your memory when you have those crappy days that we all have, and remember where to come back to. So that's just my little bit of advice there, because you never want to forget that. Alrighty, we got a special panel for you this morning. So let me bring out our guests. First, please welcome Natalie Krill. Next up, we have Megan Follows. Please welcome Dominique Provost-Chalkley. And finally, Melanie Scrofano.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Everybody's hungover. Everybody awake? No, me neither.
That's what we get with a 9 a.m. start time on Sunday, right? All right, well, it's kind of exciting, certainly, for the Earpers, this being the first time all of you have been together on a panel, the Earp family. But I thought we'd start off, Natalie, since you're kind of new. We haven't had a chance to hear from you yet.
Natalie loves going first.
You started first with me yesterday.
That was just to kind of get you comfortable. As far as, maybe tell us a little bit about how you came to the show.
Well, I auditioned. No, actually, I auditioned for, in season 1, there's twins, the 2 twins. And so initially I auditioned for the twins, and I was very, very ambitious with my self-tape for that because I had just worked on Orphan Black and was really enamored by Tatiana Maslany and the wide range of, yeah. I was swooning over all the characters that she played, so I was like, oh, maybe they'll cast me as both the twins. So I made this tape where I did both the roles, and then I guess they liked it, so they called me in to audition for Eve, and
It was the greatest tape you've ever seen in your entire life, by the way.
It was very ambitious. I smoked a cigarette, I was doing all the things. And then, yeah, the rest is history. Then I got to be Willa.
Now, I know we talked a little bit, I think, at one of the panels yesterday. I think it might have been Kat talking about how challenging it can be when you try to tell any friends of yours or associates what it is you're doing this weekend when you come to something like this. I'm curious to hear what, how you kind of present that when you tell them you're going to an EarperCon, what kind of response you get to folks who don't, who aren't in the know about the show.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I think my friends, every time I say I'm coming to a convention, they're like, wait, so you're doing another convention?
That's what my dad was like, another one?
And I'm like, yeah, and they're like, oh, so there's loads of Comic-Cons then everywhere. And I'm like, oh, no, it's like just for our show. And they're like, what? That's pretty much the response that I get. And they're like, oh my God, you're like, yeah. Everybody wants to see you all the time. And I'm like, I know, I don't really understand either, but we sort of, turn up and do it. But I think it's only when people come and actually see it and experience it, the energy that is created in these rooms and in these conventions, that people actually understand it.
I try to describe it like it's like going to camp. Mm-hmm. It's like going to sleepaway camp for the weekend. It's like...
With a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
I heard you all down there. Let's be honest.
I mean, it's my first time, so I was like, I'm going to this thing. My sister was actually really excited because she loves the show. She's continued watching it, and she's like, please, I want your character coming back. But yeah, until I started posting some stuff yesterday, I don't think my family really understood, but now they're like, holy shit.
I think it was the first, was Minneapolis, was the first EarperCon that I was a part of. And I think what was so great, really, which is a testament to all of you guys, is really what a community you have amongst yourselves and each other. And the show and what the show sort of has allowed, and the voice that it's given, and that it's a show that you are behind. I think I was just really touched by your friendships with each other. And as I see that in the other cons that I've gone to related to Wynon, Earp, I think that's pretty fantastic. I think that's one of the best things about this experience, is that you guys have found friends and have found each other.
That's what I say when I say it's like sleepaway camp. It's like...
With alcohol.
It's not so much coming to see us, but they're also coming to see each other. Yeah.
Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, because I think all of you can talk on this subject, different scenes, but some of the fun we've had is we've got to see all of you be involved, if you will, in some bar fights.
Yeah.
Now, season 1, for you, Natalie, you got to pull out Peacemaker and kill a Revenant right there on the spot. Kind of what was that like, dealing with that or doing that? You looked awful natural at it.
It was awesome. I had been wanting to do something like that for a really long time. And yeah, I think it was like one of my first scenes with Mel. I think it was my first day. And we got to do this bar fight scene, and Steve, what do you call it, fight director?
Stunter, yeah.
He was like, yeah, so you have to smash this chair over this guy and then flip this guy, and we were like rehearsing all this, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah, okay. I'm in the right place.
Now, the three of you got that really big scene in the Jolene episode.
Yes.
I mean, what was that like? I imagine lots of choreography and planning, but it sure looked like fun, too.
That was a lot. I think that is when you're so aware and impressed what a collective experience and effort filmmaking can be, because there's so many components, there's so many people. Every background player has a role. It's very important. They're adding an element of atmosphere, and they're all playing characters in a way. And every stunt person, it's very technical. That's the bottom line. To achieve it well and safely, and then for it to look absolutely wild and out of control, it has to be very technically beat by beat thought of, broken down, so you know how you're going to shoot it, so that nobody gets hurt. I think someone did get hurt, if I recall. Somebody by the bar, something happened. I can't remember. Did their nose get? Do you remember that? And because also what happens is that your energy kicks in. I think Dom beat somebody up, but we were not supposed to talk about that. Because then it's like anything, naturally, adrenaline kicks in, and people start to get excited, and which was not, that wasn't the case in this instance. I think one step 2 inches to the right or left, and all of a sudden somebody's elbow flying back can connect you in the, so that's why everything is really technically thought out. I had fun because I just decided that Mama Earp was going to be standing on a chair at that point, because she would have drunk enough that she would be rocking, because then I realized I'd be in a better vantage point being short to jump on somebody's back. So there was some self-preservation in that thought process. But then it was great because there was a stunt person. I was like, okay, so if you walk past me, then I can jump on your back, and then the rest was mayhem history.
But it is so true, like sort of like a sex scene. It's like they always, the good ones, look like there's no effort, but they're so technical that it's just, there's nothing sexy about a sex scene, and there's nothing fighty about a fight scene. Like,
There's
there's
nothing
no
violent
freedom in
about
it.
a real fight scene,
Yeah.
because it has to be really thought out, and
And we
everyone
shoot
has to
them
be
in like
protected.
so like what you said, but we shoot in little blocks. So we go 1, 2, 3, and then we stop. Because anything more than that gets too complicated and somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And so it's actually like, that took us all day, I think.
Yeah.
That took us a good 6 to 8 hours, I think.
Yeah.
And that was because it was Paolo, otherwise it would have taken 2 days. Yeah.
Now, Megan, since you have done quite a bit of directing as well, is it in something like that that has so many moving pieces, for you being a part of it instead of someone overseeing it, was that hard not to be trying to get too involved?
No, it was a relief. That's your problem. I'm just going to get jiggy on a chair and jump on somebody's back and go wild. I mean, that's what's so fun about performing, too, is the freedom that we have. We have other responsibilities, so our job is then to really just fill that world and be very aware of people's space, too, because you do have to be careful when you're doing fights, that you literally don't extend your arm a little too far,
I punched Steve, our stunt coordinator, in the face.
There you go.
And his son, guys, I punched his son in the face. No! I punched father and son in the face on 2 separate occasions. Steve was teaching me the choreography, and we never have time, so I'm always really green at it. And so I was like learning this whole thing on a little break between shooting other things. And then he's like, and then I got it wrong, so he dodged, but that's where I punched. And I punched him in the face. And then his son in that scene where I'm holding the trophy, and I'm like, woo! The kid I punched, that's his kid. And I did like that moment too soon or whatever, or maybe it was his fault. But either way,
Yeah, and part of that is, it's true, it's about having the time. So I mean, it's amazing because you guys, there's not a lot of time to do this show, so people really have to be on their ball and not be in a fight scene with Mel.
that's the people on the low end of the pay scale get to fight me.
There's a large turnaround in crew in the show.
Where'd that stunt guy go? Oh, he died.
Now, we've got some interesting dynamics that we're all certainly hoping we get to see happen with some characters in season 4. And I'm wondering if you folks as actors have started to wonder about, for example, when the time comes that Mama comes back,
Yes.
with the way things were left, maybe talk about some thoughts on what you think that might look like.
And Willow should come.
Forgive me.
Same. I actually just watched the forgiveness episode 4, in my room last night, after I came back from the party. I was like on such a Wynon high. And remember the forgiveness episode where obviously you're asking forgiveness for all the people that have hurt you and that you've hurt in the past, and then you
The Blade, season 1, yeah. Yeah.
And I love the fact that that they address that about forgiveness and how you know, forgiveness is hard, and it is. Sorry, guys, is this me?
Just buzzing, you just charge ourselves to Dom.
And yeah, so I think it would be a challenging but interesting thing to see happen if these guys come back, and how we would accept them back into the family. And I think it would be something that absolutely the show would tackle. So in whatever form it comes, I would love to see it.
I would too, because I'm sort of bored with the narratives that we're seeing a lot of like, and that's what our show doesn't do, which I love, which is like, if you've done if you do bad things, you're a bad person, and if you do good things, you are a good person. And I think I think it's more interesting, and what our show does so well is going, you can do bad things and be a good person.
It's just being gray, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the gray area. It's like you know, it would be interesting to explore like what's going on with Mama, and like why do mothers leave? And it's usually a lot more complicated than just like, she's a bitch. You know, like there's usually a reason. Might not like it, but.
Emily's pretty amazing about that too.
Yeah.
I think Emily, the writer, she likes to find the gray areas and things, and look at different kind of motivating factors. And I think too, it is interesting. I mean, although I would love Mama, I think there's some juicy drama potentially to be had, dysfunctional drama that always makes for good drama. But I think that idea too of people turning on each other, and particularly, you know, women turning on each other when something happens, I think is an old narrative, and it's not very, it's pretty cliched.
Yeah.
And I think I had a conversation at one of the tables about the Game of Thrones, so anyone who's, spoiler alert, but I was disappointed in how that all wrapped up.
I heard everybody else wasn't.
I know. I'm a loner now.
Yeah.
I'm out there on my own. Because I think they missed a really interesting opportunity to have people that do not like each other have to sit down at the table and figure out how to rule their kingdom successfully. And I thought, wow, could you imagine a scene where you'd had Cersei and Sansa and Daenerys, and all of them actually having to sit down together, and Yara or whatever at some table, even though they cannot stand each other or have different opinions, but they have a greater thing to achieve. Now that would have been a rockin' interesting piece of writing, but that didn't happen. So if we rewind history and we do it again.
Oh, we do it on Wynon App.
Yeah.
I think that brings up just an interesting and important thing about growing. You know, that you go through things, you make mistakes, and if you have someone there who can actually be open and loving, then there's an opportunity for you to grow and to learn. So,
But
Will is willing.
But the bottom line is what also is good drama. And there's nothing better than family stakes. I mean, that's where, you know, it's Shakespearean that way. It can be brutal and funny and everything, and that's the fun, because as I said, there's nothing. Being betrayed by family is about as bad as it gets. So I think that is really, so Emily's certainly got some complex characters to play with.
Yeah, I know, I was wondering and thinking myself, and I can certainly see Wynonna, if Mama comes back, being very open about accepting that for the sake of Waverly, who's maybe been hurt the most by Mama disappearing again.
But I also think because of because what she did with Alice, I think she's now like, well, okay, like ever since I've become a parent, I'm like, okay, well, I have to be nicer about my parents' flaws because otherwise my kids won't be nice about mine. And like, I want them to forgive my flaws. So I feel like the same with Mama, where it's like Wynon sort of did the same thing, so she has to try to understand her.
Mhm.
Whereas Waverly's, I don't know.
Perfect.
An angel.
You know what? Fuck our relationship.
Well, along with Wynon having all of that to be much more open, I also see that time where she's going to shut the door, be alone with Mama, and really take it out on her from
Oh, yeah.
all that's gone on there, just for her own perspective.
I think I have a thing or two to say back. I don't know what it is yet, but I'll think so.
Now, along with being able, for Wynon and Waverly, to be able to certainly forgive Mama, she's gone, she's come back and all. I'm thinking that scene with Willa might be a little harder, seeing as you did shoot Nicole, and you did, kind of go a little psycho.
Yeah, but Wynon shot me.
But only after only after you tried to shoot her. So this is going to be quite a conversation, don't
I
you
didn't
think?
sleep with your dad.
That's true, and I'm very glad for that because it was also your dad. So
No, but have you thought, Natalie, about if I do get that chance to come back, kind of how? We know the writers are brilliant enough to find a way that it would fit in the narrative, but you personally, in terms of how you would be dealing with that?
oh god, yeah. I mean, I think it would be fun. It would be fun and dramatic, and yeah, I don't know if they brought me back how they would do it, but I definitely have ideas. But
Oh, maybe. What's happening? Does that work? Sorry, guys. She'll be okay, right? Yeah. Okay.
Earpa's moving into action fast.
Might be her ankle.
So you've had a chance to think about some of those ideas about how that might play?
oh gosh, it's yeah. I don't know, but I'm sure once again, Wynon will probably close the door with me in a room and tell me what's what.
Now, I'd be curious, you folks have certainly had a chance to work on lots of different shows and as your career expands and all. Is there someone, a performer, an actor, or someone that's really been an inspiration for you throughout your career?
Do you guys have?
I always find this a hard question to ask because I feel like I'm inspired by many different
Right.
performers and for different reasons. And there really isn't there might be enviable careers that I look at that people have, but I'm often really just moved by a certain performance in a show or a place that I just find. I mean, honestly, longevity.
Yeah.
The older I get, I have also I love seeing women that are my age or older, and so in the past, when I was young, I was always looking not just at the women my age, I was always looking at the women who were older than me, because I wanted the sustainability. I wanted that I wanted to be in this world as long as I could because I loved it.
And then Margaret Atwood anointed you, and you. Guys, Margaret Atwood.
I was a recipient of the Stratford Legacy Award. It's a gala for people who had been at the Stratford Festival in Canada, one of our big classical theaters. So I had done a couple seasons there. I played Romeo and Juliet, and then I was Juliet. And Margaret Atwood kindly spoke, because I had performed in a play that she wrote a number of years ago called The Penelope Ad. And
Oh, yeah, I was there. I saw it.
yeah.
I was there. I saw it. That's the first time I ever saw you. Did you know that?
No,
Yeah.
and I don't think you knew that either.
No, I forgot. And then you said it. I was like, my friend took me there, and we went because of you.
Because it was a pretty wacky play, yeah. So did you like it? So that's why Margaret, so I performed that role twice, and then I got to direct a production of it recently as well. So
Does it make you feel like Margaret Atwood, Madge?
yeah.
Does it feel like when Maggie anointed you with the sword, that you were like, my longevity is firmly in place?
It did feel pretty damn good, I have to say. It felt really good. My parents, my father's no longer with me, but my parents were actors. My mother is still an actress. So I grew up watching a lot of theater and in the theater and seeing. So I was always inspired by my mom in particular, and by just a lot of actors you would never know. You wouldn't know their names. You know, in our country, we don't have a star system really in Canada, I will just say. In English Canada, the same way. So there's a lot of really talented, what I would call working actors. They work in the theater, and they do incredible work, and you wouldn't know their names.
And some of the best actors you'll ever see are just in acting classes. Like the most inspiring performances you will ever see in Canada. You just go to an acting class. For me, I actually do have one, and it's Charlotte Sullivan, who I'm obsessed with. I always talk about. And only because she is, I think she's one of Canada's gems. And I think she has, because she's been working since she was a child, but she hasn't been affected by it, much like you. It's just like, it was never, I'm an actress. Like, she's like, I'm a full person. And so she'll take 2 months off and like study, astrophysics. And I'm like, so how'd that go? She's like, I didn't learn a thing, but, but it was cool. I did it in New York, and it was cool. And, but I think that makes her work so interesting, because she is a well-rounded person. And so then she brings a lot of actors will bring tricks, and she just brings herself. I think she's incredible in everything.
I've always loved a lot of British actors. I was always a big Vanessa Redgrave fan, to be honest. I thought she was pretty extraordinary. Glenda Jackson. I love Claire Foy right now. I think she's pretty extraordinary. When I saw her in Wolf Hall, I was like, wow, who is this young woman? She was amazing. And a lot of male actors. It's fun to see women finally getting to, like Mel, getting to play these roles that have traditionally been, you've seen guys do. So that are complex and messy and powerful, and that's really exciting.
Are you gonna say Brie Larson?
No, I was going to say Melanie Scrofano.
You're not allowed.
I just got sent out of the class by Melanie Scrofano.
Because you have to go outside the cast. Of course you love each other.
No, I know. But that was the instant thing that came to my head. You have to understand that, like, I arrived in Canada, like, fresh off the boat, thinking, like, what does a plane? Like, yeah, really, 25 years old. Was I 25? I
24,
24, yeah. And hadn't really worked in TV yet properly. And was just so fresh and felt just so out of my depth, to tell you the truth. And I just looked at Mel, and I can't. Mel has such an intense workload. It's like the amount of lines she has to learn, she has to turn up and just crush these hugely emotional scenes all the way through the day in various different forms with comedy and everything, and it's like such a workout, I feel like, her character, you know? And yet she turns up, and every single time, without fail, she manages to inspire me. And so, from...
Natalie?
I don't know how to follow that.
I'm going to open it up and allow you folks to ask questions. So if we have Josh and the gang have got some mics, we'll be glad to let some of you ask them of our folks here. Before we do that, maybe a quick, well, it might not be quick, but I'd be curious to hear, because I've heard each of you talk a little bit at different times about how you consume a new script when you first get it. Every actor seems to have a different way. Some folks just, set aside time and sit down with their tea and break it down. Some folks wait. And I'm curious, if you get a new script for a show you're doing, do you have a process for reviewing it?
I would just say on this one, and again, which speaks again to just how extraordinary these actors are, you don't get a lot of time with this material at all when you're working in episodic television. Sometimes the actors are the last people to see this material. The day before you start the episode often. Depends. I would imagine it was pretty quick turnaround. So it's very impressive that it's a lot of...
Considering the mythology as well that we have to tackle. And so often it'll be like, Melly, do you understand what's going on?
And I'm always like, no, you
tell me. You're supposed to know. Yeah. But
remember season 1 with your highlighters and your colors?
I remember seeing Dom's book.
It was like, remember that map on the wall with the revenants? And you were like, look, I've been doing research. And there's like strings. You basically had
playing
that.
myself, yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys, how do you, any script, like how do you approach it?
If I'm auditioning, I usually just read it. I have a read through and see what jumps out at me about the character, and then I usually kind of just sit with the character for a bit and just think about them. Who they are. I don't do extensive backstory, but I like to think about where they come from, and because that's what makes a person, and the things why are they saying the things they are, and then right before the audition, I'll kind of just go over the lines a bit more. So I don't like to go over the lines too much. I like to keep them pretty loose. But then if I'm filming, I'll read the script and then do a similar. I'll just read the script a few times and just make notes about the character, things that jump out at me. I don't know, I'm pretty
intuitive about it?
Dreamy about it. I like to dream about the character and I think about it as making a suit that I like to step into. I'm weird. I don't know.
Like a hazmat suit?
In this case, yes.
Yeah, I need to, especially for Wynon, I need to read a good 3 times.
Yeah.
3 times. I need to, so the first time I'm just the first pass is and then, what's that? What's it? And then the second one is clarifying the questions, and then the third one is really trying to not miss details. I am the slowest at scripts. Any script, it could be Paw Patrol, and I'd be okay, but what? I get very confused. I need your
I do that
Her
because I
highlighters
get
and her
so
maps.
confused.
No, and I always ask Dom because she always thinks she doesn't know the answer, but then she's like, well, isn't it just all right? Like, if you've ever done an escape room, like she's like the escape room artist of scripts. Like, she's like, okay, all right, so there's a feather here. And there's a hole in that drawer. Maybe if we use this feather, in the drawer. Look, there's a key! And then she comes to things and compliments me for my work, and I'm like, thanks. Just stole your brain.
I think when I was younger, my memory was better, to be honest. So I could memorize a tremendous amount of dialogue very quickly. And I remember even that with Anne, the first, not realizing that there was a scene that we were doing, and it was literally a monologue of something, and learning it in the makeup trailer. But I was a teenager, so my brain's neurons were firing much faster, and I was in the rhythm of something. Now that's not going to fly. So I have to. I actually really love when they do the cast read-throughs, because then I get to see where my part plays, what my note is in the score of the whole piece. And we don't always get to do that, but I find that very helpful to know, oh, so I'm not so, because we get very isolated in our work. We just do our little scenes over here, and we don't know what the ramifications of this moment necessarily are going to be related to something over there.
And then you'll hear like another character's line differently when they say it, and then you're like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah. Remember the Plan B joke? She's like, during the read-through, there's the whole Plan B joke, and then she's like, and then after she's like, all right, what's Plan B? And I'm like, it's a birth control pill that you take out, and she's like, oh, that's funny.
The morning after pill. I'm in the right crowd. We say the morning after pill. Thank you.
It was really funny.
All righty, we have questions, I'm sure.
Nope.
Hi. Oh. Hi. My first comment would be I wish this con was a day longer because I've managed to get over my paralysing nerves that made me hide in a cupboard when I had to go and have my crew photo yesterday. But my question is, I'm a mum. I've been bumbling along doing that for 31 years with no guidebook, nothing. And I hope I'll be a grandma. I work with people, young people who have really severe mental health problems, and I'd ask the panel, but I think particularly Megan, how do I get those people, how do I get my kids to channel their inner Winona? And I don't want it to involve whiskey in the answer if that's possible, although I can probably get away with donuts as long as they're not too sugary. Thank you.
So I guess, how do you, well, that's a really interesting question because, and I think really that's a great question for Mel too, because there are probably elements of Winona that you would want people to channel and others that you wouldn't, right? I mean, because the truth is that what makes for good drama is not necessarily the most constructive way to handle
Whiskey.
problems in life. Substance abuse and a gun.
Yeah.
Let's,
And no guns.
and no guns. I mean, honestly, I really want to say that. And it's the first time, one of the first times as a character I ever held a firearm and pointed it at someone was on Winona Earp. And I didn't take it lightly. It actually was, it sat uneasily with me because I think we are we tend to romanticize firearms a little bit, and we do in America particularly. It's a much more North American phenomenon, so I realize the country that I'm in, and there's a different relationship, thank God. Let's just really say that. So, I didn't think I was going to go down that path, but I kind of feel like I need to, especially because of young people and what's happening in both American and Canadian, and it's out of control. So, and there is mental health issues connected to that. Absolutely. Because there's isolation and there's lack of feeling of unity and an ability to express one's feelings. And in a very strange way, there's this dichotomy between a world where you have so much interconnectedness and so much isolation. So really we have to find a way, which is why, again, I come back to you guys come to these cons because you admire these incredible performers in this piece, Mel and Dom in particular, but you have each other to connect to because of what the show, the inclusiveness that it's provided for you. And really, that's what the bottom line in the world is about. We desperately need to be embracing of one another, inclusive of one another, and realize we're okay. We're okay because we're just in this culture of fear, tremendous amount of fear, I find. So I think, so bravo to you. I think we should give you a round of applause for the work that you do.
I think that's a great, like, opening the conversation, I mean, which you're modeling, opening the conversation to mental health. And to answer your question, I think one of the most powerful, and to speak to Megan's comment, I think one of the most powerful things we can have is finding the people who, much like Wynon, found the people who accept her as she is. So I would say, like, encouraging these people to surround themselves. I remember in treatment, we Thanks. So I remember there was always a group of people who were, it's an important thing to say, but it's hard to, so I think the common thread was that people felt judged, and because of that judgment, they felt isolated. And I think it's so important, which is what I think we have here. Sorry, this is ridiculous. Is to find the people who will let you do this and not judge you for it, and who will say, you as you are okay. And you don't have to be perfect. A lot of it is driven by perfectionism. I'm speaking to eating disorders, but it's all sort of related. Like, and trying to, always needing to please people, and just sort of going like, I'm not excusing bad behavior. You know, like, you don't want to tell an alcoholic, you're fine just the way you are. Keep up what you're doing. Like, but it's also not going, it's just going, like, I don't like the behavior, but I love you. I don't know. It's a bigger topic. There's a panel about it, and you should all go to it. But I think it's important, and I think, yeah, it just speaks to what you were saying about finding your community and learning that it's okay to be who you are.
I think there's a tremendous amount of fear. You know, people feel very out of control right now because the world is in a really complicated and upsetting place. So this need to feel, I think we have to really get back to interactions, tangible, tactile, in the presence of people, as well as this incredible global community that we have, but also sitting face to face with people so that we have to sit and be in the presence of consequences of how we affect one another. Because I think things like bullying and all of that, which people are it's so much easier to do behind a screen.
Yeah.
You know, and really most bullies are, you know, I always say, and I would say this about the role when I played Catherine in Rain, you know, hurt people hurt people. That's what happens when you're hurt.
I just want to say thank you. And that's why this show changes lives, because it isn't just about you guys as the shining stars of the cast. This is about caring for one another. And this show has done something I've never known in my 61 years anything else ever do, which is it changes lives, and it changes lives for the better, because you make us braver. We don't want perfection. You give us what we need, you make us braver, and you make us understand that failure is part of success. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart as a mother and as somebody who is in the trade, if you like, of mental health. We need more Wynonas and a lot less Love Island.
At the start of this panel, I mentioned to you folks just how special these EarperCons are, and this is a perfect example, and how we can all support each other and be vulnerable and make the world a better place one person at a time. So please thank these amazing ladies.